Okay. I might not spend as much time letting them look. I mean, if there's nobody here, obviously. Well, here we go.
Hi, Becky.
Becky's here.
All right, it's 3 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and start. Hopefully the rest of the registrants will trickle in as they come online. Today we have Sharon Morgan joining us. She serves as the Program Director of Standards and Learning at Oklahoma State Department of Education. She's certified in early childhood and elementary education, a national board certified teacher or in early childhood generalist, and a certified literacy specialist for pre-K through 12th grade. Sharon received her degrees in early childhood and elementary education from Oklahoma Christian University and holds a master's in reading from the University of Central Oklahoma. Sharon was an elementary classroom teacher for 18 years before joining the Oklahoma State Department of Education. Today, she's here to talk to us about standards and learning. Thank you for joining us, Sharon.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here. I really do love talking about the standards and what they do for us. So I know that if you're participating or listening to this, you're working through a module where you're learning about unpacking standards and formative assessments. So I'm just going to be talking today about some of the nuances of our standards. I'm going to really focus on the core four and then the framework, some of the resources we have that you can use to better understand the standards. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, there we go. So today we're going to be talking about the Oklahoma academic standards and the frameworks. And I do oversee, excuse me, the Office of Standards and Learning. In our office, we have all of the content areas that have state standards along with early childhood, the instructional material cycle, advanced placement, and gifted and talented. So if you have any questions on any of those areas, I want you to feel free to reach out. Here is my contact information. And I will have it again at the end. So anything that you have questions about, or if you have questions about any subject areas, please let me know and I will get you in the right direction. So my goals today are to gain a deeper understanding of the standards, how to find them, the different resources, and then talk about the frameworks. I think both of those would be very helpful in understanding what we expect of our students and also in creating those formative assessments that I know are part of the module as well. So I want to go first into the Oklahoma academic standards. We do have standards for many areas. Some of them are listed here. We'll focus on ELA, Math, Social Studies, and Science today. Here's the statute that talks about how we have to have standards for all of our students. We have standards for every grade and every content area. We are kind of unique in Oklahoma that all of our content areas are aligned from pre-K through 12. Most states, a lot of states don't have pre-K in there, but we're pre-K through 12 in all of them. They're vertically aligned and they are used in state assessment development. So we work very closely with the Office of Assessment to make sure what we're teaching is what we're testing. We have had a website update. I don't know if you all have gone to that, but I did want to show you where they are on the new website because it's a question I've been asked. And in the chat, if you have access to the chat, I did put this link in here. I'm going to go to the very beginning just to make sure. So when you go to the State Department of Education website, you'll go to this homepage. I go to services and then standards and learning right here, and then you can bookmark it. So you'll see on the left-hand side, we'll look at that in just a minute. We have all of the standards listed, all the standards documents. You can get to them right here. We'll talk about the frameworks. We do have family guides if you would like to reach out to families and support that way. And then all of our content areas are listed here on the left-hand side. If you want more information, standards are also within each one of those pages. And then you'll notice on the main body of the page has everyone who's in charge of those areas. So for example, if you're you're talking about literacy and you want the elementary English language arts, here's Christy's information. So you can find all of us on this website right here. So I am going to go to the Oklahoma Academic Standards right here. So it's the first one on the left side of our standards and learning page. It has the legislation. Here's each subject area, and you can find the most updated standards in this middle column. And then any assessments that go along with that subject area are listed in this right-hand column. Actually, I'm so sorry. Am I even sharing that tab? Or are you still looking at the presentation? Okay, I'm sorry. Let me do this really quick. I was showing you, I'm not as well versed on Teams. Can you see the website now?
Yes.
Okay, so just really quickly, I'll go over that again. If you go to the main page and you go to services, here's standards and learning. Here's the standards and learning page. On the left-hand side, here's the standards, frameworks, and all of the content areas that are within our office. And in the body of the website, you can see all the people that are over each individual subject. So if you have any questions, you can ask me or you can reach out to any one of them. And then, sorry, really quickly, I was talking about this, I just didn't realize you weren't seeing it. Here's the Oklahoma Academic Standards page. Has the legislation, all the subject areas that have state standards. In the middle column, you can access the most updated version, and then it describes what assessments are related to each one of those areas. Okay, now I'm going to go back. Now I should be looking at the presentation. So that's where you'll find all of this. We do try to remind everyone that state standards are a responsibility of the state, just gives the minimum framework for what students should be able to do at the end of each year. Curriculum is the responsibility of the local district to determine what materials you're using to teach to the state standards. That's something totally separate. And then the instruction is part of the classroom teacher, what happens day to day as well. So I'm going to go into the 4 core areas, and I'm just going to talk about just some of the things that you'll see in each one of these state standards. Then I'll give us a couple of minutes just to go through them, maybe look at the website, see if we have any questions, and then we'll move on to the frameworks. So for English language arts, there are 8 different strands you'll see here: listening and speaking, foundations and reading and writing process, critical reading and writing, vocabulary, language research, multimodal literacies, and independent reading and writing. Each one of those have 2 strands in them. For listening and speaking, and it is listening and speaking, but for all of the other ones, we have a reading and a writing. So if you think of the reading as the input and the writing as the output, each one of those has those portions in there. So for example, language, a standard 5 is our grammar standard. So you'll see how to read, look at different grammatical aspects in the reading and also applying those in writing. Here's what a English language arts standards page looks like. Here's your grade level up here. Here's the standard, one of those 8 overarching standards. And you'll see on the left-hand side, you'll see the reading, and on the right-hand side, you'll see the writing. So I do have some phone calls and people are asking, where are the writing standards? Well, they are embedded because we know that reading and writing work together to build each other up. So we want those working together in instruction. So that's the ELA standards. And then in mathematics, there are 4 content strands, and you'll see these, like in those initials there, are what you're going to see in the standard code. So we have numbers and operations, algebraic reading, I'm so sorry, that's supposed to say reasoning, and algebra, geometry and measurement, and data and probability. We also have math actions and processes, which we call MAPS, which are really the processes that go into math, not just the rote memorization, but understanding the concepts, the procedural fluency, how to problem solve, reason, communicate about math. So those are a really important part of math as well. Here is a page, a standards page. You'll see those math actions and processes at the top. We want those flowing through all instruction. You'll see the overarching standard here on the left, and then the grade level objectives here in the middle. And those objectives are going to be the one that you're teaching each grade level. And then science, I will say we have gone through a revision of science. It's not approved by the legislature just yet. So I've worked with them a lot this year. Science can be kind of complicated, but I do love how they're formatted. So there's different dimensions in the science standards. So so sorry, hold on. So sorry. Let me do it this way. So the science and engineering practices are dimension 1, and we think of this as the doing. This is what students are doing in science, asking questions, using models, planning and carrying out investigations. Then dimension 2 is the knowing. So this is the content part of science. So we have physical science, life science, earth and space science, engineering, technology, and applications of science. And you'll see those abbreviations in the standards as well. And number 3, these are the cross-cutting concepts. Number 3, dimension 3 is the thinking. How are we thinking? These are concepts that go across all areas of science. And here's what this looks like. So this is one standard, and I'm going to show you one without all the labels in just a minute. At the top, you have the disciplinary core idea. We have the grade level, of course, the performance expectation. We have some clarification statements to help us understand it. And then here are those 3 dimensions at the bottom. So the science and engineering practice, which is the doing, the disciplinary core ideas, which is the knowing, and then the cross-cutting concepts, which is the thinking. How are we thinking about that? So here's one without all those labels, just to think about. This is a 2nd grade standard. So in the science and engineering, and these 3 dimensions at the bottom, all of those feed into this, so sorry, this performance expectation that's by the code, the 2LS41. That's the performance expectation, and all 3 of those areas feed into that. So in this one, we're looking at understanding that there are many different kinds of living things in any area. They exist in different places. We want to learn that by doing observations, collecting data, making comparisons, and we're thinking about how systems are organized, doing all of those together. If you are working on formative assessments or instruction, you could do each one of these dimensions separately, but the goal is that we're working all of those together for our science learning. Okay, and so for social studies, we have content strands, so history, geography, civics, and economics. Those are the content, and then we have these different practices. So again, it's not just about the rote content, but it's also these practices, the democratic process, civic issues, evaluating evidence, critically thinking, and then also writing. We do also have the social studies standards with the legislature. Right now, and if they are approved, they'll be implemented in the fall. We did in the new standards take away that second one, that second practice, analyze and address authentic civic issues, because more civics was added into the actual content of the standards. So here's how we navigate that. We have the grade at the top. We have those processes and practices across the top. The standards are on the left, and then the individual objectives for your grade level are right here, listed right there. So I wanted to just give us about 5 minutes or so to look at the standards, explore that website, and then see if you have any questions, anything I can answer. I'm going to go ahead, if you have access to the chat, I'm going to put those in again. Okay, I'm just going to give everybody who's on a few minutes. I'll probably set my timer for about 4 minutes. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, or I'll give you some time to ask for that. Okay. Stop sharing for just a minute. Okay, we'll just give it about 30 more seconds. Okay, does anybody have any burning questions about the standards? Anything you found? You can put it in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and keep going on to the frameworks, but if there's any questions, feel free to put those in the chat or unmute. Okay, so the frameworks, another one of my favorite things that we work on here. The frameworks are a set of resources developed by Oklahoma teachers to help educators translate the standards into classroom practice. So if you worked in a school or worked with a team, sometimes you all decide these are the standards that we're going to be assessing this week or really focusing on, but everybody has a different idea of what that standard means. And so they do it differently. And the frameworks help with that. So they illustrate what's expected of students at each grade level by examining the intent of each standard and going a little more in depth and providing some instructional options to support student learning. They're very helpful tools as you implement instruction, curriculum, and classroom assessments. I like this graphic right here. So we think of the standards as the foundation, the frameworks are kind of the frameworks of the learning, and then ultimately we want students to be mastering all of those. So they define what's expected of students by examining the intent of each standard. So the next slides, and I did put the slides in the chat, are just pictures of the frameworks. I'm going to go ahead and go live to the framework so you can see what's there. Okay, make sure that I'm sharing the correct tab this time. Can you see the English language arts?
Yes.
Is that what you're seeing? Okay, so this is the English language arts frameworks, and full disclosure, I used to work in English language arts in our office, so I know these better. So I'm going to start with this one. But any one of the frameworks that you go to, you're going to see all the other subjects on the right side. So you can very easily move from one subject to the next. So this is the English language arts framework page. On this particular page, you can find all the resources by grade level, or you can find them by topic. So all of these resources by topic, you would, if you went to 5th grade, you'd see all of them listed, but they would only be for 5th grade. The resources by topic have all of the grade levels. So I'm going to just go to one. Let's see, I think I had picked a 5th grade. Nope, so sorry. I'm going to go back here real quick. So I'm going to go first to the objective analysis. So the objectives are what each grade level teacher are teaching. So I'm going to go to objective analysis, and I picked a 5th grade one to show you today. Here are all the objectives for 5th grade. So a 5th grade English language arts teacher would be covering these. I picked 5-2R4 summarizing because that seems to be a pretty common one that we might assess. So this is in standard 2, the reading and writing process. It's on the reading side. You'll notice that the writing side is on the right. So here we go. So if your goal for the week is to teach students to summarize facts and details from an informational text, you could look in here. Here are all the different student actions that it may take to meet that objective. So I know that formative assessment is part of the module you're doing. If you're doing a formative assessment during instruction, you might pick one of these smaller sub-skills of that objective if you so chose. So here are the ones we've identified. Students would need to be able to do all of these things to meet that objective. Over here, we have the teacher actions. So these are what the teacher should be doing. Down here we have the recommendations. So if you're noticing, we of course don't want to ever just stop at the assessment. If you're noticing students are struggling with some part of that objective, then here are some recommendations of what a teacher can do to support that student. We have some key terms and related objectives. And you'll notice down here we have a sample assessment item. So we have tried to add those into the frameworks anytime we had an assessment item. Those would be from the Office of Assessment items that we've used before, items that might be on some of their practice materials, so you can see how we might test that at a state level. So all of these, again, here's your objective at the top, the different student actions that it would take to meet that objective, recommendations, and sometimes we have a sample test item. I'm going to go back up to the very top. In any of the frameworks, if you go up to the top, that'll take you back to the home page. As maybe administrators in your schools or leaders that work with teachers, another helpful tool in this one is proficiency levels if we're working on assessment. So I will go to the 5th grade and I'm going to go back to that same, we were in standard 2. So here was standard 2R4, which is what we were looking at before. And here's developing, approaching, understanding, and extending. So this kind of could give you a sample rubric to better understand how your students are doing related to that objective. We consider, and it says it at the top, we consider understanding meeting the objective, and extending would be going beyond the objective. So in your role, that might be helpful when trying to make assessments. Another area that I'd like to talk about is our literacy progressions. So for example, I was showing you a summarizing objective. In the progressions, it shows how that same concept goes from pre-K or K in this case to 12th grade. So for example, if we're trying to do this 5th grade to R4 and we're noticing students don't seem to be getting it, I can kind of look back and see where they should have come from in previous grade levels to work them up to where they need to be. So that is, I'm going to go back up to the top to the main page. So I showed you the objective analysis, which takes that specific objective and gives you more information. We have proficiency levels, would have that rubric or continuum on how that objective is met. The literacy progressions show how a topic in literacy goes from pre-K through 12. We do also have samples of universal design for learning, and this is how we might modify a lesson to meet the needs of all students. And we have example lessons for each grade level. And I will say we do have some exemplar comprehension plans. And then also we have, if you go to the writing resources, so I'm going to go to 5th grade, we have some different kinds of checklists that teachers can use or students can use in their classroom to assess writing. Okay, I'm going to go back. And all of these would also be over here. If I'm in 5th grade, I would see these, but they would just be specific to 5th grade. Okay, making sure I'm taking too long. So here is the ELA framework. So that's a resource. I'll go to the math framework. Similar, so if we were to go to 4th grade, I picked out up here, you have the math actions and processes. This shows how those would be applied in that grade level. They also have some suggested learning progressions. So if you want some ideas on instruction, they're right here. We don't have that in English Language Arts because the Strong Readers Act does require curriculum in schools. And so we don't want to contradict that. So we don't put those types of progressions in ELA. Here's the objective analysis. So all the objectives that 4th grade would have to go through, I'm just going to pick, I don't know this subject area as well. Okay, so if we were doing place value and this was maybe going to be your for the week or something that you're working on with students, it gives you kind of an overview of what that objective is. Here are also the student actions. So how might we break down that objective into different things students need to do, ways that the teacher can instruct. Here's some key understandings that students need to have. And math also has misconceptions. So these are commonly places where students might have a misunderstanding. So as you're teaching or using those formative assessments, that can be helpful. In math, the knowledge connection, so prior knowledge would be the grades before, and leads to would be the grades afterwards. So you can kind of see where they should have come from and where they're going. And this one also has a sample assessment item. So this would have been from our Office of Assessments to show how that objective might be assessed on a state assessment. Okay, and I'm going to go to social studies. So on the social studies framework, I mean, you're going to see kind of similar things, all the grade levels. We also have other key resources where we try to make this a one-stop shop. So you can go to the Office of Assessments or other areas that would be related to social studies. U.S. history I know is tested, so I'm going to go to that one. We talked about how we have the content and we also have the practices. This up here would show how those practices would be what they are in U.S. history. Go back up to the top. I'm sorry, U.S. history. There are also sample unit progressions in social studies. So these are just some ideas on how you might organize the information, questions, supporting questions. And she has this big red sign here. If you click on the unit, the one that's this bright blue right here, it will take you to more information. And you'll notice here that there's formative assessment ideas and summative assessment ideas. So if you are, I know part of this module is looking at formative assessments. So if you're trying to find some of those for social studies, that's where you would find them. I think I'm just going to back up. So those were in the sample unit progressions. And then you would go to the unit number. So if you went to, I just went to unit 1, if you went to unit 2, there's different engagement ideas, evidence of learning, here's formative assessment ideas. So there's so much information on this website. I also want to show you, so here's the objective analysis. So in U.S. history, you'd be explaining the Constitution issues that arise in the post-Civil War era. If you click on that, you'll see kind of something similar as we looked at with math and ELA. Here's the in a nutshell, so a summary. Teacher actions, here's what students would be doing, key concepts, and they have misconceptions. So things that students might get confused about might be a barrier you can look at. Down here, there's also suggested instructional resources. So here, just lesson ideas, tasks, primary and secondary sources that you can use with that objective. And I'm just going to backspace. I also should have mentioned in all of the frameworks, we do have these engagement strategies, and these, she has them from the social studies live binder, but we do put those on, and these are just high impact, low prep type strategies that you can use across lots of different types of lessons. Okay, and then finally, I'm going to go to the science framework. So you can go to your different grade levels. Now they have, so here's vertical learning. So you can look at all these different areas in science and patterns and see how they progress. That's always very helpful. Let's see, I'm going to go back. We have sample unit progressions. So different ways that you could organize the information. And they've got bundled standards. Generally speaking, it's helpful to bundle more than one science standard together, but you can see here, here's the standards for second grade. If I wanted to look more into planning and conducting an investigation, I can go here. It gives you the different practices, core ideas, concepts. The toolkits, the website, more assessment resources, different crosswalks for science and engineering and ACT. So I'm going to go back to the presentation. And here are just images. We're always welcome to take these slides if you want to share this with anyone else. And then I just want to take a few more minutes for you all to look at the frameworks. That's probably one of the things that we never have time to do is dig into all these resources. I'm going to put this back in the chat. So I'm just going to set my timer for 3 or 4 minutes and let everybody look around and see if there are any questions. Okay, we'll come back on if anybody has any questions.
I love looking at those frameworks. Every time I go in, I find more resources that I've already bookmarked.
That's good. And I will say we try to talk about them all the time because I think they are so helpful, but you'd be amazed at how many places we go and no one's ever heard of them. And why did we not know that this was a thing? So, and if you're working with schools, I really encourage you to try to set aside some time just to there's so many things in those frameworks, and we're happy to talk you through those if you need anything. But really take some time and see what your teachers find is most helpful. What could you use in your district? So I just want to talk about formative assessment. I know that you're working on that in this module. Those are conducted regularly to monitor student learning and offer feedback. So my hope is that now we have an overview of the academic standards. You've chosen what you want to look at and assess during this period of instruction. Teachers are doing some constant monitoring, whether that's observation or having them do an exit ticket or writing or something of that nature to just see how they're progressing through and giving that feedback right away so that misconceptions don't occur. I did love this quote: when the cook tastes the soup, that's formative as it's being made. And when the guest tastes the soup, that's summative. So that's at the very end. So we really do want to be making sure that students are learning throughout the process. I did want to add some other resources. So if you go to that same Standards in Learning website, we have our family guides. I'm going to go to this tab just really quickly. So these are written in family-friendly language to talk about what their students should be doing in each of these grade levels and some ideas for things that they can do at home. We do have them in Spanish, and we have just recently added AI family guides. So family guides for understanding artificial intelligence and working in the home with that. Okay, I'm going to go back. Here's a link to our assessment resources for the OSTP. We also have a platform called OSDE Connect, which I actually assume that you're probably using for this module, but our content project managers are working to add more and more content-focused courses on OSDE Connect, especially introductory. So if you are working with new teachers, new to the subject area, there will be some courses on OSDE Connect to help teachers better understand them. I would always encourage you to sign up for the OSDE newsletters. If you go to the main page, I believe it's at the bottom right, all of our content area people send out usually at least a monthly newsletter just with new learning, new resources, professional development that they're aware of. And so that's a great place to get information. And then we also have a professional development request form. It's at the top of our Standards in Learning page that I showed you at the beginning. If you need any kind of professional development in the different content areas, please reach out to us and let us know. And we try to fulfill those requests as best we can. Here's all of our contact information. It's also on the website, but these are the different project managers over the contents. So if you need any support in any of these different areas, please reach out to us. Okay, and here is my information again. So please, if there's anything on here that you see or questions that you have, please feel free to give me a phone call, send me an email, and I would be happy to help. So thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate all.
Thank you, Sharon. We appreciate you sharing this information and all of these great resources. Like I said at the beginning of the presentation, this will be linked to the MTS Implementation Year 1 Community of Practices so that you can view this and find these resources when you need them. We hope that you join us next month, the last Wednesday in April at the same time, 3 o'clock. At that time, we'll be talking about the modules on data-based individualization, DBI. We hope you join us then. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.